When it comes to total health optimization, we do want to focus on the physical aspect, the emotional aspect, the mental aspect, and then the spiritual aspect. And you really can start at any point. You don't have to start with the physical or the mental or the spiritual. You can start wherever you want. You do need to start somewhere. And so in this video, we're going to talk about the physical, but specifically about nutrition, because that's one of the easiest things that we can start to shift into, because we can start to shift immediately by choosing what we are putting into our bodies. Now, if you have not yet watched the full webinar that I have for the 7 holistic health strategies, I highly recommend watching that video because it does go through the whole flow of the 7 different steps for optimization. And that can give you a bigger picture framework of what we're actually going to go through. So I highly recommend going and checking that one out. But if you have, this is going to be the deep dive onto diet. So the disclaimer here is that we are all bio-individual. What does that mean? It means that we are unique and that there's not necessarily a one size fits all. However, there are many foundations that will benefit the majority of people most of the time. So with that being said, you still do want to be able to tune into what works for you and what's right for you, while also having that balance of these basic frameworks. So where to start? It's easier in starting with the things that are not good for us, because that's pretty simple and the same across the board. Now, you've heard it many, many times that things that are highly processed are not great. Things that are very white and fluffy are not great. Very refined foods, processed foods, fried foods, a lot of those things are not going to be great. So we're not going to dive too deep into that. However, as if this is an introduction for you, when you go into a grocery store, what you want to prioritize, even if you shop at grocery stores, which might even not be the best case, but say you are going into a grocery store, there might be a few things that you get from the aisles. Maybe like your rice or quinoa, if you eat quinoa. Maybe it's going to be some chia seeds or hemp seeds. Maybe it's going to be your favorite cracker that you like once in a while that has just a few ingredients. But those technically should be the minimal aspects of what you're purchasing. The priority here for nutrition and diet is minimally processed. The smaller amount of ingredients, the better. And that normally is found in the fresh section. So you go in and you see an apple or a zucchini, or you see ground beef or raw milk or unpasteurized cheese, strawberries, coconut water, whatever those things are that are the one ingredients where they don't necessarily have an ingredients list. And some of these things might even have an ingredients list, like sometimes meat. You go to the meat section, especially if there's spices or if there's any kind of flavoring to them, and you look over and there's MSG or there's filler. Sometimes there's pork added. Sometimes there's other preservatives or coloring. So you do kind of need to be a food investigator when you're going to the store and looking at what you're actually eating. But essentially, the things that are deep fried are one of the worst things for our bodies, specifically because they're deep fried in high temperature seed oils. And these seed oils are things like canola oil, vegetable oil, sunflower, safflower, peanut oil, or rapeseed oil. These are the main types of oil, soybean oil as well. And what happens when we're eating these normally carbohydrate-rich foods that are deep fried in these oils is that they actually rancidify. So the oils are rancid. The high temperature really adds in these things called PUFAs, polyunsaturated fatty acids, and they essentially, to make it simple, are toxic in the body. They oxidize the body. They have free radicals that steal our nutrients, and they create inflammation in the body. So these oils that are cooked at high temperatures are quite dangerous for us. But these oils alone are quite dangerous as well because of the way that they have been processed. And unfortunately, these oils are in almost everything prepackaged. Even when you go to health food stores like Whole Foods and you go to the buffet section and you look at their healthy, beautiful salad, well, when you look at the ingredients, there's often canola oil or sunflower seed oil. And while some people say that sunflower seed oil is better, it is still a highly refined processed oil. So one of the best things we can do are to look at the ingredients and make sure that we are not eating these seed oils. Some of the better ones that are, when we're talking about oils, are olive oil. Now, this is where we kind of get into the minutia, because many olive oils are actually synthetic, or they're processed, highly processed with other refined oils. So even there, when you're looking at olive oil, when you're purchasing a bottle of olive oil, you want to be purchasing one that has single origin, specifically from, say, Spain. That tends to be the best quality. So there's that. So that's the deep fried aspect. Deep fried, if you love fried foods, have it as a once in a while thing, but really do your best to avoid eating them regularly, especially because we know that inflammation in the body wreaks havoc. It makes it hard for us to digest, to process, to assimilate. It just messes with all of the symptoms, because it's literally a wound in the body. So that's the main thing that you want to really avoid, are these seed oils and these high temperature fried foods. The next thing are things that have synthetic additives and fillers. Now, namely, anything with color dyes in them, or E numbers, preservatives, things like gums, even xanthan gum or guar gums that are added. These gums and these synthetics, they gunk up the intestines, they gunk up our body, they add congestion to the liver, which is the main detoxification organ. So anything like these big, long numbers in names, we want to be avoiding those things. So you want to start to be able to recognize these E numbers or these preservatives. Sometimes they'll even say preservative or tocopherols. And that's something that is unfortunately in a lot of things. And even when you look at, like, say, an oat milk normally has rapeseed oil or canola oil, and then preservatives, and then gums. And these things are just not good for the body. The next thing there are added sugars in all the kinds of forms, like high fructose syrup, rice syrup, date syrup, beet syrup, glucose, fructose, that's just added, these molecules. Any kind of syrups that are added are normally very intensely processed, even like a rice syrup. It sounds nice, oh, rice syrup. But most of the time they're extremely highly processed, and they turn to glucose in the body or fructose in the body. It immediately spikes the blood sugar. It dysregulates our hormones, our insulin, just all of the metabolic processes. So these high refined sugars are something to really beware of. Conversely, the sugar alternatives, like specifically say xylitol, this one's one that, we see not so much, but this one can be a very big irritant to the gut. We see things like stevia, which used to be all of the craze, but stevia is known to have issues with fertility, specifically in women. I believe in men as well, but more studies have been done on women. There are things like erythritol, which is a sugar alcohol, and it seems to be like a no-calorie sweetener, but it is an alcohol, and it is a neurotoxin. So it's a toxin to the nervous system and the brain. Things like Truvia, which are filled with sucralose and a mix of stevia. These things are horrible. They're horrible for the brain. They're horrible for the nervous system. They're horrible for our insulin receptors. They completely mess with the hunger signals of the body. And studies show that they actually make us eat more calories later on. And so they're supposed to be these diet foods, but this is why you've maybe seen a lot of these stories or shows about severely obese people that say, oh, but I drink diet soda. Well, all of these diet beverages and low calorie snacks and things like that are filled with all of these gums and these fillers and these highly refined grains, and then added with these sweeteners, especially in like the keto snacks that you see, these low calorie keto snacks. This is all garbage. Garbage. We do not want to be having these things because they are wreaking havoc in the body. And the fact that they're low calorie doesn't do anything beneficial for us. So those are something that you want to be aware of. What else? just anything that has 48 ingredients on the box. This is a very complex for the body to digest, to understand. It's nowhere near what nature intended it to be. And we've gotten so used to these convenience foods and this quick, efficient, flavorful, delicious, low calorie, snacky kinds of things. But the more that we move towards this movement of efficient food or low calorie food or quick food, snack food, high protein, all of these high protein snacks, they're some of the worst ones. We've just moved further away from nature and further away from what's actually good for us. So it's like, well, what do I eat? Going back to what your great grandparents would have eaten. And it's not the sexiest thing, it's not the most fun thing all of the time, but it is what deeply nourishes us. And that is the role of food. Food gets to be nice and fun and flavorful, sure, but the real reason we eat is for the nutrients to fuel our bodies, our minds, our bones, our teeth, skin, hair, nails, reproductive systems, nervous systems. That comes from the food that we eat. Not solely, obviously, there's other things we can do, but that does primarily come from this nutrition base. And so you want to go back to if there are no grocery stores, which is like in Paris. I was just in Paris. It was amazing being back in Paris after living there for a little while. You go to your fromagerie where you get your cheese, and you go to your friterie, you go to the place where you get your fruits and your vegetables, and then you go to the butcher where you get your meats. And, there's these specialized little places where everything is fresh. Those are the places to shop. And if you don't have those, because most of us, live in North America or these places where that's not common, find a farmer's market or find a butcher box online or find a food delivery service that comes from the farm. Or if you're in the grocery stores, go to those places where the food is kept fresh. And that this is really bringing it back down to basics. What could be some meals that you have? Well, say for breakfast, 3 to 4 eggs, a few pieces of turkey bacon, a little bit of sauteed mushrooms, maybe some leftover quinoa that you had, and a little bit of olive oil. Or you can have a fried halloumi omelet with some steamed broccoli and a little bit of sweet potato. Or if you love sweet, you can have a sweet breakfast, but still mediate it where it is more high protein and less just simple carbohydrates. So for me, I love a sweet breakfast. I love having protein pancakes. But what I'll do is I'll mash up a banana and then I'll add in 3 eggs, a little bit of coconut flour or oat flour or almond flour or a gluten-free flour blend, but just a little bit. And then I will really fluff that up, add a little bit of melted ghee into it, and then I'll fry it. And I'll add some blueberries as well. Now it's not going to be the same light, fluffy, floofer, pancakes that you get at the grocery store or wherever you buy pancakes at your IHOP or wherever. But those ones are just flour and often sugar. And that really will just turn into glucose in your body. But when you're getting pancakes that are rich in eggs, and then they have either your butter or your ghee, and they have blueberries and bananas as the natural flour, this is going to stabilize your blood sugar. It's going to fuel you. It's going to fill you up for longer. And it's going to provide the actual nutrition that your body needs to repair itself. And we do want to be thinking about the amount of protein that we're getting at every single meal. If you can go for 30 grams of protein at 3 meals a day, and then maybe even having a little bit of protein with snacks, this is going to go very far. Now, what could a lunch be? Well, a lunch could be like a chicken breast, maybe on a Caesar salad where you make your own home dressing. Maybe you have a quarter avocado chicken breast, you throw in maybe some leftover sweet potatoes and make a nice salad bowl. If you're on the go. Or if you do want to have a sandwich, well, maybe just get a really good, only 3 ingredient sourdough bread, where you're having a nice big turkey breast and, some organic mustard, you have some lettuce, you have some cucumber, a little bit of shredded carrot, and your sourdough, maybe even like a homemade mayo. Or you can get a good quality mayo that has olive oil, not canola oil. So you could do something like that. For a nice snack, you could maybe have some almonds with a few meat sticks, and not like just regular beef jerky that you get from your grocery store, but a good quality meat stick that only has a few ingredients. for dinner, I love to have like a baked salmon with, again, I love root vegetables. So maybe some baked squash or parsnips, acorn squash or spaghetti squash. You could do something like that. Have some steamed veggies, maybe some broccoli, or have some grilled asparagus, a little bit of olive oil, and that's a really nice complete plate. You could have things like steak or bison, venison stew. You can make all sorts of things. There's all sorts of amazing recipes. But again, you want to go down to the basics of what are just a few ingredients of a protein, a good quality carbohydrate, ideally from a vegetable, a starchy vegetable source, and then a vegetable with a little bit of a fat. And then I do love dessert. Okay, I'm a dessert person, but I don't go out and get the cheapest kind of cookies or the cheapest kind of chocolate things. I go for good quality. Now that maybe that means a homemade muffin or homemade chocolate mousse or a good quality dark chocolate that I get for like a chocolate bar, or I'll make some sea salted gluten-free chocolate cookies. Obviously, you can see I'm a chocolate girl. Or you can make homemade cheesecakes or whatever. I love to do this on the weekend, say maybe once a week. Just pick a nice recipe online, and I normally like to choose gluten-free. Just that tends to work best for me. Gluten-free, sugar-free. I know this doesn't sound the most fun. Maybe dairy-free. And that could be like a gluten-free flour with eggs. Instead of the sugar, you can replace it with honey or maple syrup. And then instead of the dairy, you can make it with like a nice coconut milk. So this is the way that I like to make recipes because that suits me and my body. But I'll make a bunch on the weekend and I'll have it for the rest of the week. Last week, we just made pumpkin pie muffins, which were absolutely delicious. And I added in some cinnamon, my different spices and a little bit of vanilla essential oil. And I did all sorts of nice stuff. And then they're very fun to have. But when I have them, I make sure that I added in scoops of a goat whey protein, add in a little bit extra oil. And this is avocado oil, or you can add olive oil, but just to make it more complete so that the muffin isn't just a carbohydrate. It's not just flour. So those are some basic ideas. And in the resources, there are also more resources on nutrition and foods that you can create. But as those examples, it's like bringing it back down to basics. I also really like just like at lunch having a burger, but without the bread. I'll cook my hamburger patty. I'll put some nice organic cheddar cheese on it. I'll put a little mustard, a little bit of organic ketchup, just a little bit, right? Because ketchup still has sugar in it. And then maybe I'll put a fried egg on. I'll have some like Boston lettuce wraps, wrap it up, all sorts of things. Or even when I'm just feeling lazy, I'll chop up some carrot, some cucumber, onion, celery, mix it up with a can of organic skipjack tuna or like the ocean friendly tunas, mix that up and eat it on a spoon or eat it with some kind of flax crackers or something. Very basic, but these are just these things, especially if you're busy, that you can start to put together a few recipes that you really love. And stews are very good, especially if you have a slow cooker where you make a stew that lasts you for several days. These are just some great ways that you can start to bring in this nutrient dense foods. So those are the things to really focus on, are animal-based protein, specifically because of the nutrient dense in them. They're filled with the right fat soluble vitamins. They're filled with your micronutrients, your macronutrients. They are just one of the best forms of protein. The best form of protein on the planet because they work synergistically with our body. For instance, we can't just eat a bunch of algae and get out the nutrients from it. That's not how we've evolved. But little fish eat algae, and then bigger fish eat the little fish, and then big fish eat the middle fish, and then we eat the fish. And so it goes through this digestive process. Just like if you went outside to a field and started eating grass, you would vomit or have diarrhea. But the cow eats the grass. The cow has 4 stomachs. The cow digests the grass. It turns it into its omegas, into its all of the different things that the cow turns it into. And it processes it for it. It becomes the cow. And when we eat the cow, it's ready and bioavailable for us. And this is how we've evolved. Now, there are vegetarians out there and there are vegans out there. And I think that you can do okay as a vegetarian or a vegan for a short amount of time, and some people can do it for longer. However, what we see is that the majority of people actually do not do well on a vegan diet or a vegetarian diet long term, especially if they're a woman, especially if they're in their fertile years, because our hormonal system requires vitamin A, D, E, K, the good quality vitamin Bs, not the synthetics. We require enough cholesterol to synthesize our hormones, and we're not going to get that from a supplement. We're not going to get that from a soybean. We're not going to get that from a lentil, or we're not going to get that from broccoli. Those things are going to come from your main protein sources, being your animal-based protein sources. Things like egg, chicken, turkey, bison, venison, buffalo, deer. You can pretty much eat any animal. Turkey. I specifically don't eat pork. That is a personal preference that it's a philosophical, it's spiritual, it's philosophical. Also, in all of the main religious texts in every world, they say not to eat pigs. And there's something to that for me. And it just doesn't resonate with me as well to eat pork. I also don't think it's a healthy animal to be eating. It does not sweat. It does not excrete its toxins. It will eat anything, its own feces, plastics, anything. And so for me, I do not eat pork. And even seafood, I tend to stick away from octopus. It is just too highly intelligent if you've seen my octopus teacher. And I don't really eat crustaceans as well, but I do like things like a wild salmon or some freshly caught whitefish. But again, this is for you to figure out what works with you, what's in your ethics, what actually feels right for you. But a lot of times I've worked with many people that were on the vegetarian journey or the vegan journey, and they started to feel amazing for a few years. That was even my journey when I explored this after watching too many quite biased documentaries. And what happened to me was that I started to lose my menstrual cycle. I became hypothyroid. My hair, which is nice and healthy and long now, but my hair was falling out. It was just a bad situation for my body. And I became anemic, even though I was taking B vitamins, even though I was doing all the things. But once I started to add back in the animal protein, then my body started to flourish again. So this is something that you need to find your own journey with. However, one of the best things that I've seen to help people become truly optimal is to be adding in these animal proteins and reducing the things that are causing the inflammation and bringing more of a challenge to the body. Now, that's the what to eat. And the why we want to be eating this way. Now, the when to eat. For women, one of the most important things is creating safety and routine. For men as well, but it's less so. So for a woman, one of the greatest things to do is upon rising in the morning, this is good for the metabolism, for every function in the body, really, but to eat a nutrient-dense breakfast in a calm state before having coffee or caffeine within an hour of waking. And if you're somebody that's saying, well, I'm not hungry in the morning, that is a very clear sign that the metabolism is not functioning well. We are meant to wake up and within that hour to feel hungry. If you're not hungry for hours and hours and hours, that could be a very clear indicator that there is a metabolic dysfunction and probably some hormonal imbalance as well. So this is something that we do want to focus on. And when you start to eat a little bit sooner, there might be things like nausea. There might be things like a little bit of discomfort. So you want to start slow and maybe even start taking a digestive enzyme with your meals, especially if you're over 30, over 40 or 50, anywhere there. You can even start by having a little bit of warm water with lemon, maybe 15 minutes before the meal. If you know that you struggle with low stomach acid, then you could even explore taking a little tablespoon of apple cider vinegar in a pretty decent sized glass of warm water, maybe 15 minutes before, just to start getting those digestive juices flowing. Or you could even try bitters sprayed in your mouth, this very non-pleasant tasting thing. These bitters help to stimulate the salivary enzymes, stimulate the gastric juices, and that can help you digest. And now some people say that they can't eat meat because they don't have the stomach acid for it or because it makes them feel nauseous. Well, meat is one of the best things to help rebuild the stomach acid and to help rebuild the gastric juices and get everything flowing. So maybe even if you're reintroducing or increasing, you might want to microdose and then start adding a little bit more and a little bit more, just so that your body can get used to it. And, this is a little bit controversial, especially if you follow the glucose goddess, who says that where we need to eat our carbohydrates, specifically our fruit or our dessert, she suggests that for blood glucose that we eat it after a meal. However, everything that I've learned in everything that I've learned, and especially in Ayurveda or digestive specificity, it can be a little bit hazardous to eat a big heavy meal with a steak and potato and broccoli and then go have things like fruit afterwards, specifically melons or pineapple, things that turns to sugar very quickly, or even a very sugary dessert. Because if you think of it, meat takes longer to digest and a heavy meal takes longer to digest. And if you're still digesting that and then you put something into the channel that is a very fast digester, like sugar, well, then the sugar can actually sit in the gut and ferment while the rest of the meal is going through. And the body is going to prioritize that extra sugar for nutrients because it's a fast absorptive, fast utilizing force, the glucose. And then all of that extra meat and fat could actually just get stored as fat in the body. So I personally don't like to have fruit after a meal. I like to have it in the morning, but maybe right before my breakfast, or I like to have it as a snack. And that's just because in my journey, I have had digestive challenges and candida overgrowth or bacterial challenges. So for me, it does not make sense to have the fruit and sugars ferment after a heavy meal. This is something that, depending on if you're following glucose goddess or if it really is something more with the blood sugar and you don't have digestive issues, then this could be good. If you are going to have a nice big piece of cake, you can actually pair that with something that has a little bit of fat in it, like maybe some nuts or a little bit of protein, whatever that might be. Maybe if you have a little scoop of protein powder with it. Or you can even add in actually some berries, like blueberries. With the added fiber of the berries and the antioxidant, it can actually lower the sugar absorption of the cake. I personally just would not advise eating a big heavy meal and being so stuffed full and then having cake, pastries, desserts, things like that because of the glucose factor, but also because of the digestive factor. So depending on you and your goals and where you are, what your digestive challenges are, or your insulin, it really depends. But for women, we want to make sure that we are following a baseline of either eating 3 solid meals a day, and that suffices. So one within the hour of waking, then one maybe 4 or 5 hours later, and then the dinner maybe 4 or 5 hours later. And if that fulfills us, great. If that makes you feel full, nourished, satisfied, great. You actually do not need to snack throughout the day. However, if you're somebody that has had digestive challenges, then or even in diabetes or any kind of insulin challenges, then it might be better for you to have 5 eating periods a day. Maybe that's 3 main meals that are a little bit smaller, so more on the medium side, and then 2 smaller snacks. And that way it's easier on the digestion and it's also more stabilizing for your blood sugar. So then when do you have your coffee? Well, you can have your coffee with your breakfast or after your breakfast, but ideally not within the first 2 hours of waking up. And then if you're going to say, well, how am I going to wake up then? You do not actually want to be using coffee to wake you up. You do not want to be relying on any substance to give you energy. And what we find is that when you're actually relying on coffee to give you energy, you're spiking up your caffeine and your cortisol, and you will crash naturally later. And it comes into this negative cycle when you need coffee and you need caffeine just to survive and function, but you really don't want to get to that place. And if you're in that place, you want to come out of that place and start to better balance your circadian rhythm, better balance your cortisol levels, and better balance your insulin levels. Because when you drink coffee on an empty stomach, it just surges cortisol through the body, but it also messes up with your blood sugar. So you're more likely to eat more throughout the day, more likely to crave sweets, more likely to have that energy slump, more likely to feel a little shaky and tired. It can even affect your sleep, making you more groggy in the morning. So this is something that caffeine timing is very important. And then even the quality of the coffee that you're drinking. Coffee is one of the most heavily sprayed, mold-ridden, pesticide-ridden crops of all of them, as well as soy. So when you're drinking a coffee, when you go out, it would be best to avoid places like Starbucks or Tim Hortons or some of these like main cheap coffee places. And you would want to find a place that does good quality, maybe organic coffee or tested and goes through some better testing, or just have your coffee at home. And you can buy coffee from places like Four Sigmatic, or which is a nice mushroom blend coffee, or Bulletproof Coffee, which is extremely stringent tested, or Life Boost Coffee. Or you can, because you're in different countries watching this, you can just type in low acid, low mold, or low mycotoxin coffee near me. And then online, it will show you all the different options, because there are many amazing options. But those are the ones that I would recommend, so that you know that when you're drinking your coffee, you're not getting these mold and pesticides and all of the toxicity that can come with coffee. I prefer matcha. I'm a matcha girl. I actually don't drink coffee. So for me, what I'll do is I will wake up in the morning, I'll have my water with minerals, I get some sun, I'll do some stretching, I'll have my breakfast. And I personally don't like to have a big breakfast. I have more of a medium breakfast or even a smaller breakfast, but still high in protein. I'll have my breakfast and then I'll digest a little bit, I'll move my body a little bit, and then not like a workout, but just like stretching around or just waiting I'll journal, or I'll take some time to make out my to-do list for the day to get my plan. And then I'll have my matcha latte. And the way that I make matcha is I put it with a blend of coconut milk and maybe like a homemade coconut milk, or if I'll do a homemade almond milk with sprouted almonds, or with even oats sometimes, I'll just do a little bit. And then the rest I'll add water. I'll add in a little bit of ghee or a little bit of butter. I heat that up. I add my matcha. I do a little bit of the doTERRA vanilla essential oil, which is insane, just one drop. And then I'll whisk that all up, add in the milk, add in a little bit of maple syrup, which for me, I can't have matcha without maple. They go together. And then I'll have my matcha, I'll sip it, I'll enjoy it. And then probably about 45 minutes to an hour later, I'll go and do my workout. So that is what works really well for me. After my workout, I'll downregulate my nervous system, do a little bit of whatever I'm doing, and then I'll have my lunch. So this is the way that it works for me. You have to find the way it works for you. Now, if you are absolutely not going to listen to this at all, and you're just like, I am having coffee first thing in the morning, I don't care what you say, fine, I can't force you. But what I will say is to at least drink 2 big glasses of water beforehand, because coffee is dehydrating and it does tax the kidneys. So you want to be making sure you're hydrated beforehand with a little bit of sea salt and maybe a little coconut water as well, or with minerals. And these can be your fulvic minerals, humic acid minerals. It can be shilajit, the beam minerals I love, or even the elite minerals that you can find on my website on my resources page. There are many different minerals, and doTERRA actually has an amazing remineralization, like a liquid that you can pour in as well. And these are really, really great. So you can use any kind of minerals, really. In Australia, there's Aussie minerals, there's deep sea minerals, there's also kinds of liquid minerals. But you want to be remineralizing first. And then instead of having black coffee, please add in a little bit of maple, just a little bit. Add in a little bit of either a heavy cream if you tolerate dairy, it's organic, or add in some coconut milk, add in a little bit of collagen, because there you have the protein, the carbohydrate, and the fat. And this is going to stabilize the entry of the caffeine. And instead of going boo, boo, you have a nice stable rise of the caffeine without the same jitters. And maybe if you don't even get the jitters now anyways, still internally, it has a dysregulating effect. So dressing your coffee in that way can really, really help. Now, the way that you eat your meals and have your beverages, this is something that you want to start bringing a level of consciousness into. And one of the best ways to do that is to prepare your food with love, to sit, get into your body, smell your food, start to salivate. When you salivate, that's when your brain actually is ready to eat. Maybe feel your tummy grumbling. Bless your food. Just put positive energy into your food. Welcome this food into your body. Be in a happy, pleasurable place. And then taste it. Like actually put it in your mouth and chew it and swallow it and with it. Okay, it doesn't have to be this whole spectacle, but just even a little bit of intentionality. This is going to help you actually digest. When you're stressed and you're running all around and you're not present, you're not going to be digesting properly. So you want to bring in that presence and intentionality with how you are eating. Okay, I know this is hard, especially if you have a life, right? But even if you can just take those few minutes to take a deep breath, look at your food, smile. Hi, food. I'm going to eat you. I'm so excited to eat you. You are going to become me. Thank you. Thank you for this meal. I'm so grateful. Like that sends these signals to the body of pleasure. It helps you digest. It's like, pleasure is so foundational in being optimum. So you want to be doing that. And the other thing with the way to build a meal is what I like to see is half the plate a protein. So maybe like a piece of fish or a piece of steak or a piece of chicken, and then a quarter of it being the carbohydrate, maybe like the root vegetables or parsnips or beets or even some rice, and then the other quarter being the vegetables, right? Your dark leafy greens, your steamed broccoli, your asparagus, arugula, whatever you like, Brussels sprouts, whatever it is that you love. Eggplants, any red peppers, whatever. And then making sure that there is a fat. So especially if, say, your fish is not fatty or your steak is not fatty, maybe you're having like lean chicken, then drizzle a little bit of olive oil. And that's a really nice complete plate. But the other thing is that you really ideally want to be only eating until you're about 80% full. If you're eating to 100% or above, it's going to be a bigger burden on your digestive system. It's going to be harder for you to digest. It's going to pull all the blood from everywhere else and send it to your stomach. And that takes a lot of resources. So so only eating until around 80% is going to ensure that you digest better and that you're going to still have that energy to go and do the things that you want to do with that energy. So these are a couple of things to just start thinking about. And oh yeah, and then the other thing I forgot is about the flavor aspect. Not being afraid of using fat in the way it's meant, which is a flavor additive as well. Yes, of course, it's meant for our cholesterol, it's meant for our digestion, it's meant for supporting our gallbladder, it's meant for our hormones and everything, but not shying away from fat like we were taught, in the 80s, 90s. You want to be having good quality butter and egg yolks, not just the egg whites. That's not how we're run to eat eggs. You want to have some nuts and seeds, some olives, some avocado, beef tallow, duck breast that is just very fatty. You want to have these good quality fats. And then also adding in like things like spices and herbs and leafies, cilantro, parsley. Adding in the aromatics like onion and garlic can be extremely healthy for the body. They have so many nutrients in them. So adding in these spices and herbs. But you do want to be aware as well as a lot of the spices that you get from the grocery store, and especially if they're not organic in a glass bottle, a lot of them can go through radiation or can have some kind of nasty little ingredients in them, sometimes like MSG or added sugars or preservatives or some of these weird things in them. So it is best to get yourself some good quality organic spices and herbs, like whether it's cilantro or turmeric, onion, garlic, celery seed, black pepper, cumin, whatever it is. But playing with these spices, playing with these flavors, diversifying what you are eating, because the body does like diversification. So switching it up, what vegetables you're eating, what carbohydrates you're eating, what protein you're eating, but it does also like regularity. So having some consistent meal times, the similar places where you're eating regularly, that can bring in this level of safety into the body around nutrition. Yeah, that's what I want to say about that. Make it fun and flavorful as well. It doesn't have to be boring, right? It doesn't just have to be the same thing every day. You can switch it up. But what I do recommend is picking a few recipes and researching a few recipes. And maybe at the beginning of every week, say on a Sunday, you decide, okay, these are the 3 recipes I'm making this week. And I'm going to have that for the week. Getting all the ingredients, getting it ready, prepping it, having it there. These are some things that can really make it helpful when you are trying to decide what it is that you're going to feed yourself with. But bringing it back to basics, bringing it back down to what's as simple as possible, but also fun and delicious and meets your own needs and hits those goals for your protein, and then also gives you enough calories, because most of the time, most people actually eat way too many calories, but then the people in the health conscious world and in the fitness world and kind of in this consciousness space, a lot of us are actually eating too little calories and we're being undernourished. So maybe for your first month or so, it could be good to even do some tracking. And you can use a free tracker like MyFitnessPal. This, I'm sure there are many other ones, but this is one that I know and I've used. And this is one that you can actually track what you've eaten and see where it is for your protein goals. If you are getting, around 100 grams of protein a day, if you are getting enough good quality fat, which is maybe around 30% of your daily calories, and then your carbohydrates, which is maybe say around 40% or even 50% of your daily calories. So you can start to track these things just to see, wow, am I actually getting enough calories? Am I getting enough protein? And seeing, just to see like where you actually are, because most of us think we're doing way better than we are. But when you start to track and you have that data, it can be very, very helpful. So that's what I'm going to give you for now. The invitation is to go through your home, to go into your kitchen, to go into your fridge, to go into your cupboards, and to see what is real food. How much is it real food? And the stuff that's fake foods, like the Doritos and the Nutri-Valley granola bars and the Kit Kats and, all these kind of like fun chocolate bars and fluffy white breads and canola-based mayo and all of these different things. My invitation would be to just throw it away. A lot of people think, well, I'm going to eat it and I don't want to waste it, but you're putting that into your body, right? So it's not just waste, but it's actually having that effect. Once you know, you can't pretend you don't know. But it's up to you. If you don't want to waste it and you want to just eat it, fine. But start to make the decisions that you want to be making. So start to maybe replace some like your ketchup with an organic ketchup, or your mayo with olive oil based mayo, or maybe the fried chicken nuggets with chicken breasts that you start to make yourself. Maybe your Betty Crocker cake mixes with organic cake mixes, or your own cake mixes. Maybe going out and getting maybe a new cookbook from like a healthy Whole30, natural paleo cookbook that gives you some inspiration, or even just finding recipes online. You want to start to become conscious around the actual things that you're eating and start tracking if you have never done that, and start to make a plan for yourself on how you can start to make really great decisions and add in maybe a few more vegetables or some sauerkraut, fermented foods, which are very, very great. Like miso can be wonderful. Sauerkraut, kimchi, kefir, adding in some of these different items, or even like natural nuts, or having some more fruit, or, getting more fatty fish in your diet. Just starting to reflect and make a couple of shifts on some of the things that are going to really start to benefit you. And you'll see, as you start to eat this way, as you start to eat in a conscious way with more regularity that matches what your goals are, what your framework is, and you're present with your food, you're only eating to 80%, you're going to start to see that the energy is going to really elevate, that your digestion is going to be very happy, and that you're going to be fuller for longer, and you're not going to have these same cravings, these energy slumps, the same moodiness that you might be having. And it's just going to really make a positive impact. Now, it does take some time as well to see these changes. And maybe even at first, it might be maybe uncomfortable, but give yourself that time and start to make those changes so that you can start to see the benefits. All right.